Good evening. Tonight, in a special programme, we're marking the passing of the crown, the transition of power from the reign of Queen Elizabeth II to that of King Charles III. What kind of monarch will he be? How will he lead our nation through this period of enormous change? I'll be talking to people who know him well to get their personal insights into the man who is our new king. At 6 o'clock this evening, Charles III addressed the nation, addressed all of us, for the first time as our king. He paid a very personal tribute to his mother and pledged to echo her life of duty and service with his own. It was a speech I'm told he worked on until the last minute in his determination to get it exactly right. And as he talked to us from the desk in the blue drawing room at Buckingham Palace, where his mother often gave her Christmas message, he had carefully placed objects full of meaning around him, such as the flowers, sweet peas with rosemary for remembrance, and in a vase which the former Queen always used in her audience room, which has 3 little corgis on the bottom. Let's hear some of the King's words.
In the course of the last 70 years, we have seen our society become one of many cultures and many faiths. The institutions of the state have changed in turn. But through all changes and challenges, our nation and the wider family of realms, of whose talents, traditions, and achievements I am so inexpressibly proud, have prospered and flourished. Our values have remained and must remain constant. The role and the duties of monarchy also remain, as does the sovereign's particular relationship and responsibility towards the Church of England, the church in which my own faith is so deeply rooted. In that faith and the values it inspires, I have been brought up to cherish a sense of duty to others and to hold in the greatest respect the precious traditions, freedoms, and responsibilities of our unique history and our system of parliamentary government. As the Queen herself did with such unswerving devotion, I too now solemnly pledge myself, throughout the remaining time God grants me, to uphold the constitutional principles at the heart of our nation. And wherever you may live in the United Kingdom, or in the realms and territories across the world, and whatever may be your background or beliefs, I shall endeavor to serve you with loyalty, respect, and love, as I have throughout my life. My life will, of course, change as I take up my new responsibilities. It will no longer be possible for me to give so much of my time and energies to the charities and issues for which I care so deeply. But I know this important work will go on in the trusted hands of others. This is also a time of change for my family. I count on the loving help of my darling wife, Camilla. In recognition of her own loyal public service since our marriage 17 years ago, she becomes my Queen Consort. I know she will bring to the demands of her new role the steadfast devotion to duty on which I have come to rely so much. As my heir, William now assumes the Scottish titles which have meant so much to me. He succeeds me as Duke of Cornwall and takes on the responsibilities for the Duchy of Cornwall, which I have undertaken for more than 5 decades. Today, I am proud to create him Prince of Wales, Tywysog Cymru, the country whose title I've been so greatly privileged to bear during so much of my life and duty. with Catherine beside him, our new Prince and Princess of Wales will, I know, continue to inspire and lead our national conversations, helping to bring the marginal to the centre ground, where vital help can be given. I want also to express my love for Harry and Meghan as they continue to build their lives overseas. In a little over a week's time, we will come together as a nation, as a Commonwealth, and indeed a global community, to lay my beloved mother to rest. In our sorrow, let us remember and draw strength from the light of her example. On behalf of all my family, I can only offer the most sincere and heartfelt thanks for your condolences and support. They mean more to me than I can ever possibly express. And to my darling Mama, as you begin your last great journey to join my dear late Papa, I want simply to say this: thank you. Thank you for your love and devotion to our family and to the family of nations you have served so diligently all these years. May flights of angels sing thee to thy rest.
Intensely moving words from King Charles to his mother. I'm sure I wasn't the only one with a tear in my eye hearing that. One person who has known King Charles for many years, as well as Queen Elizabeth, is the former Prime Minister, Sir Tony Blair. Earlier today, he told me about what kind of monarch the man he once described as a curious mix of the traditional and the radical Charles III is likely to be. But he started with his recollections of the former Queen.
Over the years, obviously, I got to know her very well and had a huge admiration and respect for her, for what she stood for, and for her character, not just her position as head of state.
And of course, you had those weekly meetings with the Queen. I know the contents of those meetings are private, but I wonder, were they something that you looked forward to? Did you have to really prepare yourself for?
For me, the weekly meetings were usually a relief, right? Because there was always so much going on and there was so much pressure. And then you would go into this little oasis of calm in Buckingham Palace, where there'd just be the two of you in the room, sitting, just like this, and talking, and you could talk completely frankly. You knew what you said was going to be treated in absolute confidence, and you had someone in front of you with all these years and years of experience. So the very first time I met her as Prime Minister, and she may be the Prime Minister, I remember her saying to me, my first Prime Minister was Winston, and that was before you were born. So, for me, I was talking to someone with extraordinary knowledge, experience, history. So I used to look forward to it.
You also got to know her more personally in that you made regular trips to Balmoral, and you've talked about what sound like slightly surreal events with her doing the washing up or collecting the plates after meals.
Well, the weekend of Balmoral, it was fun, but it was a little, if I'm honest,
nerve-wracking.
Yeah, particularly when I started, it was quite stressful. And the very first year I went it wasn't just that it was after the death of Princess Diana, but also we would go out and have a picnic in one of the houses in the grounds of Balmoral. And the tradition was that the royal family did everything. There were no servants there. They would do everything. So Prince Philip would be doing the cooking. He'd actually be doing the barbecuing. And the other members of the royal family would be putting things out on the plate, and you weren't allowed to do anything. If you got up and tried to do something, you were told to go back and sit in your place. And I remember, because, after all, I'd grown up with the royal family and the Queen and so on. And I remember the Queen, and at that time, the Queen Mother, who must have been, 97, 98 at the time, clearing away my plate and taking the food to me, and I was thinking, no, this is too much. But it was that was the tradition.
And you know the man we now must call King Charles III. You've met him many, many times over the years. What can we expect from the new king?
I have a lot of confidence in King Charles because I have known him for a long time. He is a good man, he's a committed man, he's a caring man. He completely believes in service to the people. He knows, exactly as the Queen knew, that the monarchy rests on this notion that duty comes first. And I think, you know, he will be, if we let him into our hearts in the right way, he will also be a great rock of stability and support for us.
Certainly when you think about the Queen at the beginning of her reign, at the end of her reign, we talk about her continuity, which of course she was a great symbol of, but also she changed and evolved over those years. And for example, I mean, think about the sketch she did with Paddington at the Platinum Jubilee. That was her showing her sense of humour, but that was a moment of real modernity and accessibility.
Yeah.
She managed to keep the monarchy modern within a very traditional setting. How difficult is that, and how do you think the new king will be able to do that?
The single most difficult thing when you have a country like Britain, which feels a strong attachment to tradition, and yet the world's changing around us, so we're modernising at the same time, to be able to straddle both of those elements of society, to be able to keep people comfortable that their traditions are being upheld, and at the same time comfortable with the vast changes that are going on. I mean, that is very, very, very skillful. And the Queen, in a way, made it look easy, but it was never easy. We are attached to our traditions. On the other hand, we're not so foolish as to ignore the way the world's changing, and how you marry those together and keep them compatible with each other. That's the skill that I do believe that King Charles will have in the same way that Queen Elizabeth had.
You mentioned after the death of Princess Diana, which of course was a difficult time for the royal family. Another thing that struck me today, seeing King Charles out with the crowd, is people were singing the new version of the national anthem, they were cheering him, people were falling over themselves to shake his hands. He had a wonderful reception. And there will have been a time where he won't have been as sure of that kind of reception from the public. So I imagine that would have heartened him and cheered him enormously.
I'm sure he will feel very heartened by the reception he had. Look, we all know there were difficult times in the past. But I think it's not just out of respect for the Queen, but I do think people feel that over these years, he has proved that he is a committed person. He has done a lot for our society and for our country. I think people have come really to like and admire the Queen Consort, Camilla. And therefore, I think he will be heartened by it, but I think he's earned it.
He was famous for what were known as the Black Spider memos, where he, and you, I know, received many of them, where he would write his thoughts about current events, environmental issues particularly. There are issues, as we know, he feels very passionate about. How do you think he would combine that passion and that desire for change with the role of the monarch?
I've got absolutely no doubt that now he is the monarch and the head of state, he'll behave in the same way as the Queen. I mean, when he was the Prince of Wales, you know, he wasn't the head of state. I think, I personally used to get a lot of these letters and find them useful. People always used to say, well, you must have thought, well, why is he writing to you, and is it his role? And I say, no, I find it useful. He used to write to me sometimes about the farming community, issues to do with the armed forces, you know, issues to do with the environment. I never minded. And actually a lot of what he said made a lot of sense. So I think, but he will understand that now he's in a different role. And I think you'll find that as the head of state, you know, he knows what to do. I mean, this is someone who has watched his mother over a very long period of time, and he will know what to do, and he will do it well.
One of the key things that Queen Elizabeth II achieved was her work with the Commonwealth. She brought more nations into the Commonwealth. She also was a unifying figure for the nations of the United Kingdom as well. And that's going to be very important, isn't it, for Charles III?
Yes, it will be important to keep all bits of the United Kingdom together, because the Queen was respected, whatever people's politics, she was respected throughout the UK and throughout the Commonwealth for sure. But then, as Prince Charles, he did a lot for the Commonwealth, and as King Charles, I think he will be every bit as committed as the Queen was. I mean, I know he cares about it a lot, and he's held in respect by the Commonwealth leaders. I mean, my institute works a lot with many of the people who are in the Commonwealth, so I know the leaders well, and I know they think very highly of them.
You wrote about King Charles III as a curious mix of the traditional and the radical when he was Prince of Wales. What did you mean by that?
So again, Prince Charles on one level is a very traditional person. If you look at him as he dresses and as he behaves and as he carries himself, he carries himself like you would expect of a monarch. On the other hand, although he was really interested in conservation and understood what needed to be maintained, you'd have to say on the environment, on issues to do with climate, on issues to do with racial equality, he was well ahead of his time. I mean, he was raising these issues of climate change with me long before it became the enormous cause it is today. So I think that he's a reflective person, and he also, I mean, he's intelligent. He works hard. He thinks about things, and I mean, personally, I think that's a good thing, and because what it does is it means that he has that same thing that the Queen had of being able to be both traditional and modern at the same time, and therefore that's why I've got a lot of confidence in how he will be. You can think of his commitment to young people. I mean, again,
with the Prince's Trust, for example.
Prince's Trust is an amazing organisation, incredible work. Now, he didn't need to do that, by the way. No one says the Prince of Wales has got to go do this, do that. So the Prince's Trust, you think of how many young people, I met a lot of them, by the way, some of them later in life go on to become very successful. So I think if you look at the things he's done, he's never done things that are divisive, really. He's always done things that I think most people, whatever their politics, whatever their background, would think, well, that's a worthy thing to do.
Last question. King Charles was the longest heir apparent and is someone that most of us have also grown up with. We feel we know him. Is there anything about King Charles III, do you think, that will surprise us?
I think we will find very, very quickly with him that we get reassurance, and that the recognition that she really exemplified of the importance of service, the importance of duty, of always recognizing that you should never be complacent about the position of the monarchy. It's something you've got to work for every day. I am as sure as I can be that he has that same character.
The former Prime Minister Sir Tony Blair. He talked, among other things, about the King's charitable causes, one of the most notable being the Prince's Trust, which he set up in 1976 to help improve the lives of disadvantaged young people. A man who benefited personally from the Prince's Trust and is now an ambassador for it is Golden Globe and Emmy Award nominated UK and Hollywood actor David Oyelowo, who joins me from Berlin. David, thank you very much for joining us. I wanted to ask you first of all about the Prince's Trust, because the Prince's Trust, as I understand it, I mean, you're a very successful actor now, but it's what got you started.
Yeah, it is what got me started. As a teenager living on a council estate in Islington, London, I simply couldn't afford to go to the National Youth Music Theatre, which is a place I wanted to spend my summer doing acting, something that my parents at the time were not necessarily supportive of, but I sneakily applied to the Prince's Trust, got the money I needed to be able to do that. And it truly changed my life. I met my wife, Jessica, there, but I also fell in love with acting there, and it's what led me to feel the confidence to be able to go to drama school, and eventually my parents came around because I had been encouraged by the then Prince of Wales.
And I know you have met the man, of course, we're now calling King Charles, on several occasions. Tell me a bit about the man that you know.
Well, I've met him at formative moments in my life, and he has had formative impact on my life. As I mentioned, getting the money from the Prince's Trust to be part of the National Youth Music Theatre. But one of the first times I met him, I think the first time I met him was at the Royal Shakespeare Company. I was privileged to play King Henry VI at the Royal Shakespeare Company. We would do all three plays on a Saturday. He came to a day where he sat through Henry VI, Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. So he sat through 12 hours of Shakespeare. It started at 10:30 in the morning and finished at 10:30 at night. And it happened to be the day that my father also attended that show. And not only was my dad getting to see me, a black man, play the King of England, which was something he was shocked by, but he got to see me performing it in front of the future King of England. And that was formative for my dad in his shift in disposition towards the acting profession, how he saw the UK, actually. My dad suffered a lot of racism in the 60s and 70s when he first moved to the UK. So it was a formative moment for him to see me achieving something he didn't perceive possible in front of someone who he didn't perceive it was possible for me to perform in front of.
David, finally, let me just ask you briefly, if you will, what kind of king do you think King Charles III will be, from what you know of him?
None of us know truly. I mean, of course, he has massive shoes to fill, but I sit before you here today as someone whose life was changed for the better by him, both in terms of his trust, the Prince's Trust, that has helped over 1 million young people in the UK now, me being one of them. And every time I met him, it was a pleasurable experience. And I felt his heart. I felt his heart for young people, for the disenfranchised, for people who are living way outside the margins of his own experience. And I think if he carries that spirit into his kingship, he's going to fill those very big shoes very well.
David Oyelowo, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Thank you. Well, I'm glad to say that with me now is broadcaster, writer, former MP and friend of the King and Queen Camilla in particular, Gyles Brandreth. Gyles, thank you very much for coming along this evening.
Good phrase there. Speaking of his good heart, the King, King Charles III, has a good heart, a good brain, a good attitude, and I felt his very moving speech this evening hit exactly the right note. It rose to the occasion. I was moved at the end when he gave a quotation from Shakespeare, and there we have a little bit of Shakespeare there. I think we're going to see in the coming years perhaps rather more Shakespeare and less horses than we've had under the last Queen, but I know it's clear that he understands what's going to be involved and is determined to deliver in the way that his mother did. He made that crystal clear that he was renewing her vow.
And talking of the Queen, of course, was such a consistent, unchanging presence in our lives, a very positive person, and that's something he'll want to emulate, I imagine.
Yes, we only ever knew her as Queen. That's what she was throughout our lives, whereas we've got to know him as the longest-serving Prince of Wales in history. And we've seen him, articulating his views passionately over the years. We've seen the ups and downs of his life. We know him very well. And now he has to become something different. He's no longer the Prince of Wales.
And how do you think from what you know of him, his character will change, if at all?
I don't know that character will change, but rather as the coins will have the sovereign pointing in a different direction, he will have to point in a different direction. And he's made it clear that he understands that. The very fact he mentioned tonight how the role that he feels he has had over the years of moving things from the margin to the centre is now going to be inherited by the new Prince and Princess of Wales means that he realises he's got to leave all that behind. When I last saw him a few weeks ago, I went to meet him in his study at Clarence House, and I went into the room and I couldn't see him. I thought, oh, he isn't here. And then his head popped up from behind a mountain of paperwork, books and papers all around him. He has been a workaholic for all these causes, writing notes, producing papers, organising meetings. He knows all that's got to change. He's got to hand that over to other people, specifically the new Prince of Wales, because he has now this new role, which I think he will fulfil in an exemplary fashion.
And we're seeing you there with Charles in one of your fabulous sweaters, I have to say, Gyles. Corgi on the front, very appropriately. He made specific reference to, as he referred to it, his darling wife, Camilla. How important will she be in this new monarchy as his support?
Asset. The Queen, I mean, if we regard the Queen's reign as a success, and we do, the joint author of that success was the late Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, her husband. And I think if King Charles's reign is to be a success, and I have no reason to think it won't be, a triumphant success, different, because it's a different time, it will be a joint success for him and Camilla, who the Queen very sensibly earlier this year, as her Jubilee statement, said that she hoped that Camilla would be the Queen consort.
And what does she bring to the relationship?
Well, she brings fun to the relationship. She brings support to the relationship. People used to say that the Prince of Wales sometimes walked around with a cloud over his head, that he seemed very anguished and anxious. That isn't how he is with her. When she is there, he's fun, he's jolly, he's easy. And I think just as the Queen stepped into her role in 1952 with an ease that surprised people, I think people may be surprised at the ease with which he steps into this role now, lets go of his past role and assumes kingship with at his side the consort he wanted.
And the reference that he made to Harry and Meghan and his love for them, what did you make of that?
I love that. It was right.
Was it a message to them, do you think?
It was a message to all of us, actually. It was clear that the future lies with the Prince and Princess of Wales. They are going to carry on the work here. But he wanted us to know, and indeed he wanted Harry and Meghan to know, that he loves them and that he wishes them well in their future life as they build a life overseas.
Gyles, thank you so much for coming along and joining this evening. Thank you to Gyles and, of course, to David Oyelowo and Sir Tony Blair for helping us to look forward after a tumultuous 2 days that have seen us bid farewell to the long reign of Queen Elizabeth, the second Elizabethan age, and welcome the age of King Charles III and his Queen Consort Camilla. Tonight, in a very personal and moving speech, the new king pledged to serve us all with loyalty, respect and love for the rest of his life. A new era has dawned. That's all from me in this special programme. Bye-bye.